Hey y'all. I have Melissa Gendreau with me, and she is an Iowa native and the founder of Forward Path with Melissa. After years as a therapist, Melissa felt called to transition into Christian life purpose and marriage coaching, where she now helps individuals and couples discover humble confidence to embrace their God-given purpose, strengthen their marriage, and move forward with clarity, faith, and intention. Her journey from clinical therapy to faith-based coaching brings a unique blend of professional insight and heartfelt spiritual guidance. So thank you, Melissa, for joining me.
Thank
Um,
you.
is I'm happy. I'm happy to start with this whole new little transition of my brand with a therapist because I also come from a therapy background. So I feel like this will be a really good conversation. Um, but yeah, let's just kind of start with the question of how have you helped clients through hardship or if they're ever feeling like they're kind of left behind? Like what does that look like in your therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I work with teens and adults from all ages.
Mm,
That's a topic that gets discussed really at kind of any age development, because I think there's times we all feel like we're behind in some area or another, where
mhm,
we uh, far too often make comparisons with same age peers or with, the neighbor down the street or unfortunately social media,
mm,
celebrities, all of the above. And so a lot of times I'll have clients that'll come in and, we'll say, well, I'm not as far as long as I probably should be. Or,
mhm,
why hasn't this happened yet? Or what's wrong with me? Um,
mm,
and a lot of times the first place that I start will be the word should. Um, it's it's kind of a dirty word.
mhm.
I my clients usually know that when we are talking, and if they say should, they like, oh, oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason for it is because should is this obligation and duty,
Mm,
but it's arbitrary, right?
mhm,
So it's this arbitrary obligation and duty that we put on ourselves.
mhm,
And so for my Christian clients, I'm really able to say, like, unless this is scripturally based, right? Like,
mhm,
unless whatever we're like should be doing is we can clearly find it in the Bible.
mhm,
And then actually it's better for us to switch that to must or have to.
mhm.
Because sometimes we also use should as a way to get ourselves out of things, right? Like,
True.
yeah, I should read my Bible, right? Like when in fact, really, if we switch that to should, like must and have to, um,
Mhm,
we would maybe follow through on it a little bit more.
mm,
But when we do the should, and it's completely arbitrary, where, I should be married by now. I should have this raise. I should whatever. Um, and we don't have anything to actually compare that with. With what? Because everyone has their own path, everyone has their own timeline, and everyone has their own pacing. And I think that's the biggest thing to try to help any of my clients who are struggling with the time-based questions, right? And it's
mhm,
trying to figure out, okay, so what do you actually have control of? Right? Like, is there anything that's going on that's in fact hindering you from whatever it is? Right? Like, if we are
mhm,
talking in this instance, dating or having a spouse or any of those things, right? Are there actually some things that you're doing that are legitimately hindering this process? Right?
Yeah.
How are you presenting during dating? We can even back up. What's your profile look like on your dating apps, right? Like, are there tweaks? Are there things? Um, and then more in depth, are there character things that you really could be focusing on? Are there areas that are insecurities? Are
Mm-hmm.
there areas that you're emotionally or spiritually immature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are there things that are going on in your life that it would be really positive for you to be working on those things, regardless of whether you have a spouse or not?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it's important to look at what's outside of our control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there, um, I've had clients that were truly amazing human beings. And the fact that they were in their late 20s, early 30s, and had never been married yet, eh,
Yeah.
there weren't any there weren't any clear things that we could say, yes, this is why, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so with those, then it was really just trying to help them be okay with the idea of being single for right now or for whatever that looks like,
Mm-hmm.
and um, embracing what are they able to do as a single person that
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's attached actually isn't able to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a lot of times there's grass is always greener idea.
Yeah.
Um, but truly, if a person is able to look at the things that you can do as a single person, specifically having to do with personal growth, is so much easier when you're
Mm-hmm.
not married, right? Because um, it's a process,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's not an easy process.
Mm-hmm.
And it tends to bring up a lot of hurt and a lot of past pain and a lot of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if there's the ability to be able to then, if you're in my therapy office and then go home and you're probably a little raw
Mm-hmm.
and, needing time to be able to process that. Or, if you're reading a really great self help book, or if you are really diving into scripture or doing any coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ability to have the time and the space to be able to process all of that,
Yeah.
really, truly a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and within that, then there's gonna be there gets to be experimentation, right?
Oh
There
yeah.
there
Yeah.
gets to be the shifts of, what am I interested in? What do I want to pursue? What's the latest hobby I would like to see if I'm passionate about? Um,
Mm-hmm.
those are not nearly as easy when you are also navigating your day-to-day schedules with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the ability from that standpoint to get to be selfish, at least with your time, and that is a freedom that again a married couple doesn't necessarily get, or you just have to navigate it in a completely different way, right? So
Mm-hmm.
trying to really flip that script for some of my clients, to be able to help them see how working through the timeframes or working through the hardships can be a positive while they're single.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you bring it like there's so many good points in that. Uh, but it made me think of a couple of my friends who actually went to 5 different weddings last year.
Mm,
And so three of them in particular, well, actually all of them were long, like they had been single for a really long time. But
mm,
um two or three of them in particular have like reached out and we've just had conversations and they're like, I didn't realize I was gonna miss this, or this other thing.
yeah.
Obviously they're super happy with their spouses and they're loving being married. But we've been able to kind of have those conversations to be able to touch on and think about, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. Like I get to do this, I get to travel, I get to
Mhm.
go hang out with whoever I want to, respectfully, obviously, but
Right.
you know, I get to make all these decisions and don't have to necessarily worry if it's gonna affect somebody else.
Hmm.
Where like when you get married, have to take that into account. You have to take your spouse into account. So you don't get to just do those things.
Hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, that is just like something that I think we as singles really forget. or don't know because either it's not talked about, because I feel like I haven't had that conversation with many other married people that I know.
Mhm.
Or at least they present it like, oh, well, you just don't know. They don't really give like an example of how it's different, you
Right?
know?
Yeah. Well, I'll give a personal example for you, right? So my
Mm-hmm.
husband and I have been together for 23 years. We've been married for 18.
Okay.
Um, so long time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I love doing art, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I love to draw, I love to sketch. I would love to be better at it. Um, I I have a ridiculous amount of art supplies with the interest and joy of wanting to be able to do art more often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, however, we also have two kids.
Okay.
So I work full time and
Mm-hmm.
am married and have two kids.
Mm-hmm.
I love all of them, right? Like I wouldn't want to replace any of that.
Yeah.
However, there's this big part of my life that I would like to be a big part of my life that at this time frame is not at all able to be a part of my life.
Right.
Um, where I can try to schedule in little brief amounts of time,
Mm-hmm.
um, but that gets complicated. And unfortunately, like I don't actually have a space in my house that gets to be like just for my art stuff. So if I am going to have an artistic whim where I'm gonna pull out a whole bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
that means we don't get to eat at the dining room table.
Mm-hmm.
That would be way easier if it was just me. And then I was like, whatever, I will then just eat at the bar, right?
Yeah.
So it's same thing having to realize that just the random things, like right, the random hobbies, the random um, interests and things that you would maybe want to do, you
Right.
maybe just don't get to in quite the same way.
Mm-hmm. That's so valid. And like you even mentioned too, the grass is always greener, right? We always have this idea that it's gonna be better once we have, well, like insert thing here,
Hmm.
you know? And I don't know, I guess like how do you kind of handle that in the therapy session? Like if you have, I mean, obviously respectfully to your clients,
Sure. Yes.
like if hypothetically,
Hmm.
if you had like a client that was just like so stuck on, um, it has to be this way, like they can't get past that, all or nothing thinking,
Mm.
um, like how would you walk them through that?
Yeah. I that's an interesting question because I think honestly that's an area that our society really is struggling with right now is the
Mm-hmm.
all or nothing thinking. I mean, we see that kind of anywhere, right? Like, so if somebody doesn't agree with you, then obviously they believe the complete and total opposite. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it's um it's not, for one, it's not helpful. And most everything in life is nuanced and there's context to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times with my clients, if they're kind of doing that black and white thinking or a little bit more extreme, more rigid thinking, um, I'll ask them to come up with all of the other potential options, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like make them come up with more, right?
Mm-hmm.
They might say, well, no, my plan was to be married at 30. And, you they might be 29 and a half. Um,
Right.
and so then it's going, okay, well, so that's one option. And maybe that will still happen in 6 months. We have no idea, right?
Right.
Like you could meet the guy tomorrow. It, that,
Right.
but what are the other options?
Yeah.
What are the other potentials? And usually the first thing that they will pop up with is, well, then I'm going to be single forever. And the answer is, well, but we don't know that either,
Right.
right? Um, is that a possibility?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Uh, but you could also meet somebody in a year from now, or 18 months, or 3 years, or whatever. Um, and as soon as I start coming up with different timelines, you can see that sometimes the frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because the frustration sometimes comes from I'm not really one that allows pity parties.
Yeah.
Um, and so because I'm not willing to let them sit with the woe is me attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not to say that that the situation all by itself isn't frustrating or hard. So it's not to minimize that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not going to be beneficial to then go to extremes. And it's not going to be beneficial to then um, settle on this other potential that we don't
Mm-hmm.
know that that's going to be true either. Right.
Right.
So it's helping them to understand that there are so many other potentials that we just don't know. So we can say, yep, I understand that you would have liked that timeline. And so what if it doesn't happen? And that
Mm-hmm.
tends to be the next part, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I'll offer all the options, like what could be all the options?
Mm-hmm.
And then we go, okay, but what if? What if that doesn't happen? Then what?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of times a person just doesn't necessarily want to think about that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we tend to go to extremes, right? And not really any different than if a person says, um, if they messed up on something and then they go, I failed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's go, okay, but did you fail? Like what
Yeah.
would have actually had to happen for you to fail?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we have these really big words and those words get really loaded,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't actually take the time to process what that word means and what it would
Mm-hmm.
mean in this situation. We
Mm-hmm.
just it it just is there and it's uncomfortable. And so we just don't think about it. But then that just makes the emotion bigger, right?
Yeah.
Um
It's true.
so, the idea of well, if I'm single until, again, this magic age of 30 or 35 or whatever the, magic age has,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of anything beyond that becomes that big loaded word or idea, um, and doesn't really want to get processed or discussed of, okay, but what if?
Mm-hmm. Mm. That's good. I feel like I just went to therapy for a second. uh, it's so true though. Like, I mean, because I have friends that are like different age ranges. I'm
Hmm.
in my mid 30s. I have friends that are in their 40s. I have a couple friends that are in their 50s.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's just really interesting to like see the perspectives as they've
Hmm.
shifted as the longer somebody's single,
Hmm.
right? And then how much hurt comes with that.
Hmm.
And so I guess like the next question would be like,
Hmm.
how would you kind of help somebody really walk through those stages of hurt and grief? Because really that's what it is too.
Hmm. Yeah. I think the I think the biggest thing is having to figure out how do you name the grief, right? Like
Mm. Mhm.
name what is the specific thing that is hurting right now in this season, right?
Mm. Mhm.
Um, so I'll have clients who are, let's say they're in their mid to late 20s, right? And
Okay.
they have tons of the friends that are getting the engaged, right? Like that's maybe I guess we'll say the first wave of marriage seems to be right
Yeah.
around now in so truly for them, sometimes then the grief is because this is the first time that they're bumping up against that. So
Hmm.
it's kind of this almost newness of it and not knowing how to process it. And so it's kind of the first wave of maybe what's wrong with me or what am I missing out on or how come not me, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that tends to be kind of the mid 20s-ish, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I have my clients that are more in their 30s, mid 30s, that one's a little bit of a different population because um not that this one is not that this one is easier, but it this age range does allow me to be able to do a little bit of comparison for a second.
Uh-huh.
Um, because that also tends to be the age that now they're also having various friends who are getting divorced,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
And um, those are the conversations I'm able to talk about with some of those clients in that process and being able to help them understand truly why a lot of people are getting divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the people who are getting divorced, at least right now, and it's interesting because why people are getting divorced now is different than 10, 15 years ago, why people are getting divorced, like when I first got into therapy.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for it is truly because they didn't get married for the right reason.
Mm.
They got married, and there's this current kind of trend of getting married for someone to love them.
Mm.
That's the focus.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that ache and that hole and that loneliness doesn't actually get filled by the spouse,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and especially then for my Christian clients, it's the reminder that we we were all created with a God-sized void, right?
Yeah.
And only He can fill that.
Mm-hmm.
And He is to be that priority, that number one spot. So
Mm-hmm.
we create dependence on Him,
Mm.
right? When we don't have Him in that primary spot and we're not having dependence on Him,
Mm-hmm.
whoever or whatever we have in that spot instead, we're going to create dependence on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a healthy place to be.
Mm-mm.
Um, and so it's the ability to be able to then talk with that age range in that, mid 30s to be able to describe um, all the pain that
Mm.
um, those divorced individuals are having to deal with, and it kind of just this different. And it's so again, it's not to go, well, their life is worse, so get over it. Like
Yeah.
it's it's to help there just always be perspective, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's really during that time frame, it's then figuring out um, what has been their growth process, right?
Mm.
And what is the purpose of them wanting to get married,
Mm.
right? Like, is it because the idea sounds really lovely? And is it because um, you don't want to just feel left out? Or, what is it in comparison to, is it that idea that you want someone to love you?
Mm.
Is it that idea that um, you want to be wanted by someone
Mm-hmm.
and pursued by someone? Um, and while those aren't bad things, if
Mm-hmm.
that's the primary reason for getting married, it's not actually going to go well anyway. Um, Especially if you have two people that's the reason why they're getting married.
Yeah.
You're going to have some pretty hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you add kids, and that gets real
Yeah.
hard because especially when you have babies,
Mm-hmm.
babies do need you,
Yeah.
and they will love you unconditionally because their life depends on it.
Yeah.
So if the woman got into the marriage because she wanted to be loved,
Mm-hmm.
well, now she has a newborn that'll do exactly that. And
Mm.
that causes a whole bunch of problems, right?
Mm.
Um, or if you have a husband who was wanting to be loved, that's why he got married. And now all of a sudden you have baby.
Mm.
And now wife is having to take care of baby, and baby is
Yeah.
priority because again, they need that for life. Um, husbands can get a little bit resentful.
Mm-hmm.
And then you end up having this dynamic that is complicated and not healthy, and issues ensue, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, so so much of this is perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really having to name what's the reason and what's the focus of the grief. Um, when when it's my clients who are maybe in their 40s and they're either still single, as in they've never been married before, or they've been married and divorced and now single again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of this, in the 40s, especially if we're talking women, but men too, I've had this with guys too, they feel like they focus kind of on the time frame where
Mm-hmm.
if we are going to have kids,
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of bumping up against time.
Yeah.
Um, and that one's a hard one because again, all of these, the grief is real. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like any of these aren't true or aren't factual or any of that. It's just how do you process it, and it's just different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the some of it is just having to um, again name the grief, and then it's figuring out what would acceptance look like. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so also recognizing the come what may.
Mm-hmm.
Um, again, we don't know, right? Like,
Right.
so you could be 47 years old and, you turn the corner at a bookstore and there he is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that there aren't. I mean, now we live in an age that there's all sorts of options, right? Like
Yeah.
there's adoption, there's all sorts of things. Or, if it's someone who has been previously married and has kids of their own, like,
Mm-hmm.
family right now is there's a lot of different options, I guess. Um, so it's walking through what is specific to them and why is whatever the grief that they're struggling with, why is it important to them? Why does it hurt
Mm-hmm.
different right now? Um,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes again, we've gotten better and maybe too good at focusing on the emotions of
Mm-hmm.
things,
Mm-hmm.
and we've really backslid on recognizing what are the thoughts associated with the emotions.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been processing that in my own like personal walk. So that's why I was like, so true. Uh, because I keep like God has me on a little bit of a journey right now. Obviously, that always happens, but my specific
Hmm.
journey right now is like part of it is retraining my thought patterns and like being able to when I have whatever the intrusive thought or negative thought is to be able to stop myself in that moment and go, no, this is not
Hmm.
factual and this is not true.
Yep.
This is what's true, right?
Hmm.
And even after like 4 or 5 days of already, well, it's been longer than that, but in the first 4 or 5 days of this year, I noticed such a huge difference in how I was even carrying myself,
Yeah.
right? And
Hmm.
just being able to go, like that's not true. I don't need to hold on to that
Yeah.
thought anymore while it's still like the emotion that brings it up is still valid, but or that it is brought up by is still valid, but I don't have to hold on to that anymore. I can let it go,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. And a big thing. So most of my clients they will tell me that in between our sessions, they will hear my voice saying, "Where's the evidence?"
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's good.
and so it's also even a reminder, I think, to like how do emotions happen, right? And if a
Mm-hmm.
person is able to think about it from an equation standpoint, so
Mm-hmm.
you have a situation or an event,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then based off of that situation and event, you have a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Based off of that thought, then you have an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And after the emotion, then you respond.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we've gotten really good, and I really think too focused on the emotion.
Mhm.
and, naming the emotion and identifying the emotion and how does it feel and where does it feel in your body and all of those
Mhm.
things, which that's not bad, right? Like it is good. That's, if the very least, it's information.
Mhm.
But what we've forgotten to do is then walk back one step and to
Mhm.
go, okay, but what was the thought that I had about the
Mhm.
situation? And is
Mhm.
that thought true? Where's the evidence that that is true?
Mhm.
Do I have all of the information?
Mhm.
And is my thought based on this particular situation and event? Or am I bringing up past situations and events into this too? And is that
Mhm.
actually relevant in
Mhm.
this situation?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Once we're able to make that true and align and be able to tease that apart, the emotions often will kind of take care of themselves,
Mhm.
especially if you focus on the thought. And this
Mhm.
is where there ends up being some pretty differing views and opinions currently.
Mhm.
Um, and it's so our body will keep score, right? Like
Yes.
our body will remember those emotions.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not that we shouldn't still give that um its own space, right? Like we
Mhm.
should acknowledge that. At the same time, we can we can talk ourselves back into the emotion if we're focusing on the emotion,
Mm.
right? So
Mhm.
an example that I, will give, let's say that I am home alone and I hear this like crash bang outside of the house.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a situation. My thought is, oh my gosh, is somebody trying to break into the house?
Right.
Right? Um, okay. And then so my emotion is going to be a lot of fear and terror. And
Yeah.
then, my response is probably going to be to, first be sheepish and, hide. And, then try to work my way up to looking out the window.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, what if I now realize, like, I finally got up in the courage and I look out the window and it was a raccoon that knocked over my garbage can? Okay. So I now have new information,
Mhm.
right? I now have actually all the information I need to be able to change my thoughts
Mhm.
and then to be able to shift my emotion,
Yeah.
right? But here's the thing, if I think again about how scared I was and how fearful I was and how it felt in my body and where I felt the fear in my body,
Mhm.
I can actually talk myself back into being just as scared as I was before I knew that it was just the raccoon,
Mhm.
right? Where, and the emotion was valid, it was absolutely real, but it wasn't justified. And so when we
Mm.
give emotion too much weight, an emotion that wasn't justified, we're going to stay stuck in it.
Mm. True. Yep.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And so, yeah, so lots of times with kind of any situation, it's
Yeah.
important then to make sure that we are focusing more on the thought. And again, this is where I think society wants to go the, black and white, either or rigid mentality.
Mhm.
I am not saying don't pay attention to your emotions. I'm not saying don't acknowledge them. I'm not saying don't understand them or figure out how to take care of them.
Mhm.
But I am actually saying that your thoughts are more important than your emotions.
Mm.
And we have a wide variety of Bible verses that
Oh.
reinforce that.
Yep.
Um, so um, I think the the mental health field, um, well, the mental health field by and large is incredibly secular,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is
Mm-hmm.
majority secular,
Mm-hmm.
which then means therapy best practices are not at all going to be rooted in scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything new and trendy that's coming up from the mental health sphere, it's really important that we are um, that we're testing that against scripture.
Mm.
Um, because so often, just because it sounds good, right? Just because there is a cool new therapy jargon to go along with it, doesn't actually mean it's going to be helpful or beneficial for you,
Mm.
and certainly
Mm.
not God honoring.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's partly why I got out of therapy.
Yep. So that is so I have, been a therapist for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that process has been an interesting one where how I was taught in grad school way back when is not at all how therapists are taught now.
Yeah.
Um, and the focus is different. The
Mm-hmm.
process is different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, um, I have done therapy in nonprofits. I've done secular nonprofit, Christian nonprofit, and then the last 5 years I've had my own private practice.
Mm.
Um, and then in private practice, my prayer has always been, God, this is your practice. So
Yeah.
I will do it for as long as you tell me I'm supposed to. But please make sure then that I don't have any clients that are actually going to um, cause me to go against your will.
Mm.
So, different states have different laws. In the state of Iowa, um, as a therapist, I'm not allowed to say no to a client because of my opinions or faith.
Oh. Hmm.
Yep,
That's tough.
it is indeed. Um, and the last couple of years, just the mental health field has really swung more secular and more worldly and more divided than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And so for Christian therapists, my hat's off to a lot of them who are maybe in states that they're able to be a little bit more open with
Yeah.
views and things and all of those things. And but yeah, so in the last year, God has kind of told me, okay, now you get to expand. And so that's where he has told me to shift into coaching.
Yeah.
Um, and really the beauty of coaching, and I think the difference from a mental health therapist, from a coaching standpoint, is the starting point, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So the starting point when it comes to therapy is generally going to be mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's some component of a person's life. They're not able to function well because of um, either major distress, like situational distress,
Mm-hmm.
that's hindering or hampering, or an actual brain, something chemically is not going well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the starting point is safety, is security, is
Mm-hmm.
steady, calm, right? Like that's the starting point. And then the shift, hopefully, is to go from mental illness into mental health.
Right.
Um, and that one even gets a little bit complicated because, you can have clients who they would really like and want to be your client for a long, long time.
Yes.
And it's not that there aren't always things you could talk about, right? Like that's like
Right.
there can always be growth in those types of things. But um, one of the areas that I think people kind of forget about is for their, well, for insurance to pay for it,
Mm.
there needs to actually be medical necessity.
Yep.
So as a therapist, you have to sign off on medical necessity.
Uh-huh.
Um, so for that to work, you're having to say that your client still has a, mental disorder, that makes therapy still medically necessity or, necessary for them to pay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, that gets a little bit different if a person is private pay or out of pocket or, any of those types of things. Um, Coaching, the starting point gets to be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
The starting point is a person who is already healthy. They already have mental health, but they want more, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's the ability to step into abundance, into growth, um, and that's exciting, right? Like
Yeah.
it's exciting to get to see the transformation of a person, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's it's I guess for the practitioner, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's different levels of fulfillment in both of them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but the roles are so different. Um, in the one, it is to you're having to be the emotional steady in the room,
Mm-hmm.
right? And with every client that I have to be a little bit different for that client.
Right.
So my presentation is a little bit different. Um, how I talk with them, how I can ask questions, all of those things have to be gauged on
Mm-hmm.
how are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
What's their level of health or fragility, either that day or their
Yeah.
current state, right? Um, where coaching gets to be um, the opportunity to see somebody flourish, right?
Yeah.
There's the ability to be able to push a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
not unkindly, but it's not any different than, if you have a fitness coach. If they never push you at all, you're probably not going to see real good results.
Results. Yep.
Um, and so there's their ability of that. So even when it comes to, people listening to the podcast or, doing any of those things, um, it is good to pay attention and to really even think, where are you personally, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
are you in a place where, yes, therapy would be really helpful and really beneficial? Um, and, there's the need to have that emotional steady for you so that
Mm-hmm.
um, you can find steadiness, that you have the ability to um, let somebody help in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Versus um, if you're a person that, has done processing, that has done growth, that has done some of those, um, coaching might be more the way to kind of look at it and way to
Mm-hmm.
go. Because the focus just gets to be different.
Right.
And, there can be just different goals and you can see just different levels of growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful way to put that.
Right.
Because there, in my perspective, like going through school, and I did my undergrad at a Christian university, but then did my grad school at a secular college. And so seeing those vast
Mm,
differences and how all of that came together was really interesting. And then like working in all of these different secular places
mhm.
up until now, like I'm now in a private school, but as a teacher, not a therapist, which
Yep.
is a whole other thing that's super fun. But um, being able to like go through those different experiences and kind of see how do I live in this box
Mm,
that is like extremely secular, and but
mhm.
still, one, honor God, but two, like be able to help my clients, right?
Right.
And then like now that I'm out of that and now that I'm teaching, it's so funny and a bit ironic because I'll catch myself like running through these different scenarios of like, okay, I've done this with this client, but this is a kid and a student. So I can't really like use the same jargon, but how can I help this kid? And so it's been pretty funny to see like how God's worked that out and to be like, okay, I
Mm.
have all these skills that I can use, but now the clientele is different, right? And
Right.
how I'm gonna like work with this child to kind of help them grow and develop in who they are. And then I don't have to worry about talking about God. Like I can preach at them all day long if I want to
Right.
and not have to worry about it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you said it that like explained it that way because I think it's sometimes to those of us in the millennial generation,
Hmm.
um, who we've been fed the like you got to break the curses, which is so true. And I think that we are a generation of curse breakers, but at
Hmm.
the same time, we've gone, like you said earlier too, we've gone to the extreme and it's like
Hmm.
too far. We have to bring ourselves back like kind of to the middle ground of how do we do this without being in therapy forever? Like where's our tipping point to finally progress through to something different?
Hmm. And I think a big one with that is truly the difference between if a person is able to recognize the difference between being a victim of and a survivor of, right?
Yes.
Because the situation is the same, right? In both
Mm-hmm.
situations,
Yeah.
the event doesn't change. Um, it's really just the view of how are we going to respond after it, right?
Mm.
So if a person is a victim of, um, and I think there ends up being such a stigma against using that term. And for one, there ends up being the, oh my gosh, how dare you victim blame. That's
Right.
certainly not what I'm saying. Um, and it doesn't even have to be like for a person to be in a victim mentality, it doesn't even have to be a woe is me, this happened to me, any of
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, what I'm actually seeing right now, and truly this actually seems to be happening more in my Christian clients.
Mm.
And I'm seeing this even whether I'm talking therapy clients or coaching clients,
Mm-hmm.
um, is they'll use their past pain or past hurts or past trauma, whatever, situation or words we want to say. Um, and they will use that as not necessarily their testimony,
Mm.
right? But they will use how maybe God brought them out of that, but now their identity is this person that God brought them out of the past.
Mm.
And that's where they stay though,
Yeah.
right? Where it's obviously important to glorify God and the things that he does. And it's not that we shouldn't acknowledge the hurts that we had and the traumas that we had. Um, but we're also told that we are to be a new creation.
Mm.
And when we are giving God the glory, it shouldn't just be, He brought me out of this. My testimony is, um, a child in an abusive home and God brought me out of it. Or, um, somebody who God brought me out of a divorced marriage or, right? Like any of those.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where their testimony stays is
Right.
yes, the glorifying thing, the wonderful thing that God helped them through, but it shouldn't be a period in the story, right?
Right.
Like it's now acknowledging what he did and then being able to shift and pivot and go, and I'm so excited for what's next,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to shift into that and that then keeping that testimony, that past testimony actually ends up being
Mm.
a victim mentality without realizing it, right? Like it,
Mm-hmm.
and the interesting thing is I will hear lots of clients that will actually describe that as a growth mentality because, God brought me out of it. I'm like, you are absolutely right. He did. But you're still telling the old story.
Mm. Mm. That's good.
And
It's so
it's,
true.
yeah. Versus if we're able to view it more as the survivor of, right?
Yeah.
It then is still giving it's glorifying God. It's giving him the credit for it. And then it's again the focus on and next, right? Like
Right.
how how can he use me because of that? Not that he caused it to happen, maybe allowed it to happen, but
Mm-hmm.
now how can he use it?
Yeah.
And where next? And the growth mentality is the and where next. And that should really be more the focus is
Mm-hmm.
the next steps, um, where um, the the interesting thing right now, and again, pendulum swings and
Mm-hmm.
the extremes happen, is there's a strong desire to want to make sure people are real,
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that people are genuine, which is completely important. And especially now with AI, it's important to make
Oh
sure that
yeah.
people are actually, have their legitimate credibility and it's not just an AI prompt that created the course. Um,
Yeah.
but but with wanting people to be true and genuine, we seem to want to then keep everybody in this I'm a mess mentality,
Mm.
right? Where
Mm-hmm.
if a person if a person claims to be doing well, somehow it's gotten flipped on its head to, well, obviously they're suppressing their emotions,
Seriously, why?
right? Obviously they haven't processed their past trauma and they are disassociating. Oh, okay. Or it can
Or
actually be true that a person has put in the time and the
mm-hmm.
energy and
Mm-hmm.
the effort and is growing. And we're supposed to be growing. And again, the opposite isn't, well, that person never has a bad day, right?
Right.
Um, but we're not really supposed to focus on that. It's not that it doesn't happen. It's,
Right.
okay, what did we learn today? And then how can tomorrow be better? And if we
Mm,
string a whole bunch of those days together, how much further down the road would we be?
that's valid.
But we have to allow people to be okay.
Yeah.
Because right now the
Mm,
trend is it's okay to not be okay.
right.
And it's not that we want to like shame that. Of course it's okay to not be okay. But
Mm-hmm.
then the opposite of that has turned into, well, now it's not okay to be okay.
Mm.
And then you have a whole group of people that want to be genuine together in their mess.
Dang.
And and the problem is then you hold on to it, right? Like
Yeah.
I actually have quite a few clients that one of the hardest things for them in growing
Mm-hmm.
is being willing to acknowledge to other people they're growing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I can see that.
Because the worry is, well, they're going to think that I'm bragging. They're going to think I'm not honest. They're going to
Mm.
think I wasn't honest before.
Mm.
They're going to think that I was exaggerating my problems.
Mm-hmm.
Or for some, again, if their whole, usually social media, if their whole social media presence had been wrapped around their anxiety and living with anxiety and dealing with anxiety, they no longer know who they are when they're
Mm-hmm.
not actually struggling with anxiety anymore or not like they were.
Mm.
And so I've seen people then sabotage
Mm-hmm.
so that they stay in the spot they were because that's how they're known.
Ooh. My therapist used to love to call me out on that. She was like, "You're creating your own chaos because that's what you're used to." And I'm like, "You're right."
I, I'll tell my clients, I'm like, why are you picking the baggage back up? We
Yeah.
already put it down.
Yes. But it's true. And we
Yeah.
see that, like, we even see that in scripture, right?
Hmm. Absolutely.
And it's like, why are we doing the things that we know that we shouldn't be doing? And yeah, that's a whole other tangent that I won't go down right now. But um I just checked the time. So let's wrap this up into a
Okay.
beautiful little bow. Um what are like two practical tips that you would give a single client right now? Or use me as an example. If I'm your client, what are two tips that you're gonna tell me to do for, I don't know, to I guess the what next part?
Yeah. Um, so two tips that I would say. So I would encourage anybody, you or anybody that's in, current state of singlehood,
Mm-hmm.
to use this time as an opportunity for personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so the two areas that I would say focus most on, because if I were to reverse this, the two areas that I see married couples struggling the most in
Mm-hmm.
is selfishness and
Mm.
immaturity.
Oh, okay.
So for my single clients, then it is focusing on what are your areas of insecurity.
Mm.
Make sure that those are things that you know. What are the what are the what are the sore spots, right? What are the insecurities? Whether that is physical insecurities, whether that is
Yeah.
character insecurities, relationship insecurities. Um, so because getting married isn't going to make those things go away. It will just amplify them in different ways you never experienced and
Right.
didn't anticipate. So because of our insecurities, that's where selfishness comes in.
Mm.
Um, and selfishness is maybe not quite the right word. Um, if I were to switch it, it would be egocentric.
Okay.
Um, because there's a difference, right? So
Yeah.
it tends to be more the immaturity
Mm-hmm.
aspect, um, where it's not that you are saying you're better than somebody else, which can be a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more selfishness. It's more forgetting that you're not the main character of everybody's story.
Yes.
And so when a person has different insecurities,
Mm.
because we tend, right, like in whatever area you're insecure with, the worry or the fear or the assumption is that everyone is focused on that insecurity with you too.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how then it turns into being egocentric and focused on
Mm.
yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if there's the ability to be able to strengthen those areas, right? To be able to decrease your insecurities in whatever areas those are. First, you have to identify what they are,
Mm-hmm.
and then come up with what are ways to be able to grow in those areas
Mm-hmm.
or view them differently or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the thing is. And then it's recognizing how, because of those insecurities, are you then believing that you're kind of the main character of the story, right?
Yeah.
Do you see yourself doing that in friendships,
Mm-hmm.
in at work? Um, look back at past relationships that maybe didn't work well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because now here's the positive. So let's say somebody never ends up getting married, right? Um, Working on these things will always be beneficial, whether marriage is a result or not,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because these are the things that are likely causing you distress on a day to day basis.
Mm-hmm.
So if these are the areas that you're able to grow in anyway, there's never going to be a time that you're disappointed that you worked on this.
Right.
And at the same time, if then God does bring someone into your life, you're already in a better place than you would have been had you not worked on it.
Mm, so true. That was perfect. I have no notes. Where can everybody find you on the social media or otherwise?
Yeah, my website is melissagendreau.com. Pretty easy, just my name.
Mm-hmm.
And then on all socials, it's Forward Path with Melissa.
Awesome. Okay, I will also drop those in the show notes. That way everybody can find them. And I just wanted to say thank you for joining me. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.